pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Mr. Fields has circulated last month's minutes to our previous meeting. Have the commissioners had a chance to review those minutes, and is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. First substantive item on our agenda today, we've got other vehicles for hire applications. The first is for Black Van and also Nashville Electric Transportation. Mr. Fields?
Both of them have applied. All the applications are in order, and we think they should be approved.
I make a motion to approve both.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There's also a review request from Alpha Limo to transfer an application. Mr. Fields?
In order to transfer an application, the commission has to hear the transfer. All of the paperwork has been filed and is in order, and there's no reason they're eligible for the transfer.
Gotcha. Is Alpha Limo here today? Do the commissioners have any questions for Alpha Limo?
Make a motion that we approve Alpha Limo's application for transfer of certificate of public convenience.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda concerns wreckers. We have a public hearing on an emergency zone transfer request for 2 wrecker services. We'll take the first one. Donaldson Wreckers has requested a transfer from the late Christine Shelton to Keith Shelton. Mr. Fields?
Miss Shelton had been the operator of Donaldson Wrecker for years, back into the 70s, I think. 69. Miss Shelton unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago. She had served the city well in her role as the manager and the operator of this particular zone. Her son Keith has asked to have the zone transferred to him.
Mr. Fields, could you point out which zone we're talking about on the map you have there?
The zone we're talking about is the Donaldson zone, which means I have to put my glasses on to make sure I can see everything appropriately. But it's this large area right here to the west part of the county that covers most of Hermitage and Donaldson out to the county line.
And Donaldson Records held that for how long, that zone?
Since the 60s? I was going to say, I believe Mr. Shelton had it prior to Miss Shelton.
You received any objection to the transfer?
We reviewed all of the zones with the police department and with the Emergency Communications Center and asked if there were any reasons, any issues that need to come up, and there were no issues raised on the Donaldson.
Your experience, you comfortable with Keith Shelton?
He's operated, to my, since before I became familiar with this commission back in the 80s, he was already working at the business.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fields, have there been any requests to speak on this particular issue?
No requests. There may be some, but nobody's filled out a form.
At this point, I'll close the public hearing portion on this particular request to transfer so the commissioners can deliberate and make any motions.
It seems to be an issue, right?
But it's not necessarily an issue. I want to make sure, as my lawyer, if you'd like to do that.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure. I think it's there's actually maybe 3 provisions in the code that would be applicable. 680, 160 talks about the license transfer of a wrecker company. So Ms. Shelton, as I understood it, owned the business as a sole proprietorship, and Mr. Shelton appears to be her heir. But as a sole proprietorship, I am not an expert on probate law, but I think there would be a transfer from her to him at some point of the license for the business itself, or just the business of a wrecker service. There's also a separate provision for the license to provide emergency services, which I think is 68535, as well as the zone provision, which is 68545. So, I mean, it would and the commission would be required to approve at all 3 stages.
Can they approve them, do they need to approve them one at a time?
I think it depends how the motion is worded in a way to include all 3.
Does the license have to transfer through probate first before the emergency zone?
Actually, the license itself can't transfer through a bequest, correct?
No, that's the
The zone cannot,
provision
that's
can't
correct.
without commission approval.
Correct.
I'm not an expert on probate law. I'm not sure I can answer that question. That might be something that we might look to Mr. Shelton and his attorney to address.
Mr. Shelton, do you have your attorney here with you?
No, my attorney is out of town. She'll be back Friday. But I've got the will and the power of attorney and everything if you'd like to look at it.
Her
There's
attorney.
nobody that could probate, nobody could contest it. It was just me and my sister, and my sister wants no part of this business. She lives in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So.
Do you know when,
Ms. Shelton, come on.
thank you, Mr. Shelton.
Okay.
Do you know when this particular issue on the license transfer will occur in probate?
Friday.
Friday?
This Friday, yes, sir.
Have you received any advice as to whether the license or whether ownership of the company will be passed to you through probate? Or
Yes, sir. I've got it right here. If you'd like to look at it, I've got a copy of the will. It's all in black and white. Nobody.
So you're expecting on Friday after probate of the will that you will receive ownership of the.
I'm assuming
Donaldson
unless it,
Yeah.
I'm not real familiar with that kind of stuff.
Mr. Stone has advised me that if the commission would like to take action affirmatively for Mr. Shelton, you could do it contingent on the probate happening the way he has described. And then if it failed, then we'd bring it back to the commission for further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton.
All right, thank you.
So if I understand, we can, there could be a motion to allow transfer of the emergency zone to Mr. Shelton, contingent on receiving the actual record license through probate this Friday.
You would make a motion that would,
I'm sorry, could I clarify? The commission itself has to approve the transfer of the record license and of the emergency service license.
so 3 steps, the license, the service, and the zone.
And I think what the probate court would just ensure would be that he would in fact inherit all the assets of the business so that he would have the facilities necessary to operate it.
I'll take a stab at a motion. I would make a motion that we approve the transfer of the license, the emergency service, and the zone from Christine Shelton of Donaldson Wrecker Service to Keith Shelton, contingent upon Keith Shelton inheriting the business from his late mother, and conditioned upon him supplying to Mr. Fields or to the office proof that he has inherited ownership of Donaldson Wrecker.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, we have a public hearing on Carter Automotive's request to transfer its emergency zone from service and zone, from the late Jimmy Carter to Ava Carter, Mr. Fields.
Jimmy Carter had operated the zone in the northwestern part of the county. It's the large area right here that covered the Joelton area, and probably part of what some people call Goodlettsville and Lower Walkers and so forth in that part of the county. He passed away a few weeks ago. Ms. Carter has asked, very similar to what you just heard, has asked to operate the zone. They're represented by Mr. Doak.
Hello.
I've been representing Jimmy Carter since, I think he was probably one of my first clients. It's been 45 years of the 50 years I've been practicing. And the operation of the business has been run by Eva and Jimmy. Jimmy's had some health issues in the last year and has been out a significant amount of time. And she and her children have been operating it. Now, I have a statement by Brian Carter and Jimmy and David Carter, Brian and Eddie, who are the only two children ever born to Jimmy Carter. And they both have recommended it go to the Evie, and by the time I have some things drawn up for them to sign that will convey their interest in this as heirs at law. There are two ways to do it, by will and by intestate succession. It's personal property. And Ms. Carter has not yet sought the establishment of administration, but I will immediately do so. And I'd like to, if you could, go on and transfer it to her pending establishment of administration and the execution of the two documents that I have prepared for the boys to sign.
And Mr. Carter, he died intestate?
He died intestate.
And so you're going to be obtaining from the two sons documentation relinquishing any interest in the record service, so Mrs. Carter can own it in full and have the license and the zone and the service?
Yes.
Any questions from other commissioners?
Two documents that you have from Brian and Eddie?
Yes, I have them here.
Are they notarized?
Yes, they are. Would you like me to?
Yes, please. Thank you. What's your name again?
John Doe.
Yeah, just Doe, thank you.
I got his Travis.
Mr. Doak, did you prepare these documents?
No,
Okay.
Looks like an
This is-
email was sent.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
this is what I'm going to have them sign.
I don't want to see that yet. When do you expect that Mr. Jimmy Carter's estate will be
Set up.
well settled or completed?
Well, they don't start fussing at you for a year, but I will get it established, started within 2 or 3 weeks, whenever I can get an appointment with a judge.
So it could be a year before Eva Carter actually has ownership of
Oh, no,
Carter Automotive?
no. That will be within 2 or 3 weeks. Matter of fact, as soon as I can get to the boys and get them to sign the documents I prepared.
Okay.
each of which is just, each of them is going to convey his interest to her. And I'll put a notary public on there. I am one. It's a hell of a note when a lawyer loses his voice. Tell you.
I've heard a number of judges say they were grateful for that.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Especially with me.
Thank you, Mr. Doak. Is there anyone else who has requested to speak on this issue, Mr. Fields? At this point, we'll close the public hearing portion for Carter Automotive's transfer request. Commissioners, is there a motion regarding a request?
Pretty close to the same as the last one, subject to.
It is, except Mr. Carter died intestate as
Intestate.
opposed to having a will, but it's a similar process in that we could, if we wanted to, make it contingent on the actual transfer from Mr. Carter to Mrs. Carter of the ownership of the business. We could do that.
The only concern I have, unlike the Donaldson record, is how long it may take for the transfer of the ownership. We were told by Keith Shelton that he expects this Friday to inherit ownership of Donaldson Record. While I respect Mr. Doak's estimation that will be a couple weeks, going in testate and giving anyone who wants to object to any transfers, like he said, up to about a year before the judges start pushing those cases, just concerns me about a motion that would have not have a limit on the end of it as to when the transfer needed to occur. Mr. Fields, do you have any input about Eva Carter operating Carter's Automotive?
For the last several months, Ms. Carter has been actively involved in the day-to-day management of the company. Mr. Carter had some illnesses, and he and I had spoken on the phone several times about how the business was operating, during inspection time and that sort of thing. So, to my knowledge, she has been either the manager or the co-manager for many months, and probably many years if you get down to it.
And if we don't take any action today on this request, what's the consequences to the zone, the emergency services, and Carter's Automotive?
Well, if the commission did not take action, then there would be nobody to service the zone. Then we'd have to provide a backup for that zone until the commission took action. I think the commission, and I believe you have the authority, if nothing else, do an interim decision until, if you want further information on the estate. But again, with the exception of the late Mr. Carter, it'll basically be the same people operating the zone that were operating prior to his death.
And primarily, this is zones where if something happens and the police make first call to Carter Automotive.
Correct.
So there could be some harm to the public if we don't take some action today.
It would certainly, would have to change, the police would have to change, or the Emergency Communications Center would have to change the processes in which they dispatch the vehicle,
Okay.
dispatch the records.
But it is possible to issue a temporary license or a temporary permit to continue operating?
I don't believe the ordinance specifically talks about a temporary. Basically, the commission has the authority to assign the zone on its own authority. It can call a special meeting to assign a zone if it chooses, or it has to have an annual meeting. I think your authority is complete in terms of how that zone is operated. You have the authority to create the zone and then determine who operates it.
Well, this particular request is just a request to transfer the emergency zone and service, correct? Not the actual license, record license?
Well, in order for her to operate, she would have to have a record license, an emergency, and then be designated as emergency service before she could be allowed to operate an emergency zone.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is this application requesting transfer of the license as well as the zone and service.
As a staff, we would actually take it as a request for all three: the license, the zone, the license, the service, and the zone. Yeah, while it would not specifically say that was the intent. That's what, when we see the transfer, we see that as the intent of the applicant. Because they all fit together.
When did Mr. Carter die or pass away?
He died right at the end of March, I believe.
March 30th.
Well, I'd make a motion. In the interest of the public being served with emergency services, not to disrupt the zone, I would make a motion that the emergency service and the zone be passed to Eva Carter, and collateral with that the license also pass to Eva Carter for Carter Automotive, contingent upon Eva Carter becoming owner of Carter Automotive. And I would like to put a 60-day time frame on that motion, attached to that she become owner within 60 days of today's date. And if not, then to report back to us so we can take a special session to consider it.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is we have a company application from M&M Towing along with Yusri Hainan's record driver application. Mr. Fields?
M&M Towing has provided all the documentation that is necessary, as well as Mr. Haneen's application to be a driver. We believe it's in order for the commission to approve.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve M&M Towing's application for general record service.
I second.
Motion passes. Is there a motion regarding Mr. Heenan's record driver application?
So moved.
Motion approved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, we have our annual emergency record zone public hearing for all existing emergency zone operators. Mr. Fields?
The ordinance requires that on an annual basis, the commission consider consider the zones as they've operated, and also consider any applications for operation of that zone or any alterations of the zone. Historically, the commission has held the meeting, and we ask each of the record companies to be present if they have statements they want to make, or if you have questions of them. So the first part of this particular process would be to review the existing zones and the service of the existing companies. There's also an application to operate an emergency zone that would be in the second part of this particular public hearing.
Mr. Fields, have there been any submitted requests to speak?
Of course, the companies don't have to, they would just speak.
Sure.
But outside, I don't believe there have been any.
All right. I'll go in order. A.B. Collier?
I'm David Dunn. I'm owner of A.B. Collier Record Service, and I'm here to answer any questions you have. We've had the best year we've had in about 35 years, so we're doing good.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any complaints?
Do what?
Are there any complaints?
I don't have any complaints.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunn, what zone on the chart are you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Bailey's, Martin's, and Mike Custom Towing.
Hello, I'm Maggie. I'm owner of all three. I'm not going to
Hello.
keep much of your time, and I'm not going to come back up here each three times. I'd just like to represent all of them right now. But I just want to thank all of y'all for everything that y'all do, Billy, as well as the ladies in the office, attorneys. If I can be of any service, call me. I appreciate everything, and I don't have any complaints, or if you have any questions, I'd be free to take them.
If you could identify for me on the chart where Bailey's, Martin's, and then Mike's is located.
There's Bailey's, there's Mike's, and then there's Martin's.
Thank you.
Brown's.
Gary Brown, Brown's Record Service. I'd like to thank the board
not any problems that I know of. I don't think there's any complaints. Everything seems to be going good. It's nice to have the Madison precinct out there now, the new precinct, so that's been a plus. So everything seems to be fine.
Thank you. Carter's, well, we've already heard from Carter's. Is there anyone from Carter's that'd like to speak?
I'm Philip Randall. I'm here from Carter's. We have no problems, no questions or concerns. We get along great with our neighbors. Anything y'all need from us?
Thank you. Chapman's.
Chris Graham, co-owner of Chapman's. I just want to tell y'all thanks for letting us serve another year. It's been a good year. So, as far as I know, we don't have any complaints, and look forward to continue to serve you.
Cotton and Topro.
I'm David Williams with Cottons and Topro. Just like to thank the commission for another great year. I have no complaints and no issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Dad's in West Nashville.
Jim Mitchell with Dad's Towing in West Nashville. We appreciate the opportunity to continue operating another year. Everything's running smoothly. With the help of both my general managers, Chase Mitchell and Larry Boggs, we have no complaints.
Mitchell, do you own Dad's and West Nashville?
Yes, sir, I do.
What's it like running both or two record companies?
It's pretty tough at first, but like I say, with the help of these two men, I'm able to do it. It's operating very smoothly.
And does Dad's have his own and West Nashville has its own?
Yes, sir, they do.
Do they compete or?
No, sir.
Dad's zone, West Nashville is here.
So as the owner, you have two zones, but each company has one of the zones.
That's correct.
And you happen to own both companies.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Donaldson.
How you doing? I'm Keith Sheldon. I'll be representing Donaldson Record Service. I'd like to thank the board for letting us another year service in the zone, and we haven't had any problems at all.
Thank you. Hillwood.
Good afternoon. I'm Murdy Shope with Hillwood Record Service. I want to thank all of you for serving on our board. I appreciate Mr. Fields, everything that he's done for us, and everything's gone well. We're just happy campers.
Any questions? Thank you.
I want to give y'all something.
What is it?
Thank you.
Be careful. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
No, Schultz.
Ms. Schultz, can I ask you a question real quick? Sure. I just happened to read your experience at Hillwood Record. If you'd go to the podium or to the mic, please. Sorry.
Okay.
I see that your company was started by your husband, Charles Shope.
Yes.
And it passed to you and your boys.
Yes.
Did it pass through a will or through probate or?
I don't know. The record board did it, so I don't know. I guess it passed through a will, I'm sure. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you have to come here and have the license and everything transferred like the other two companies
we
just
did.
did?
Yes, back in that day, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Smith's.
You know, I saw the representative earlier. He may have had to step out. I apologize for that. I'm assuming he may have had a call or something that had to go to.
I'll come back to him in a moment. Tommy's.
Tommy Goddard, Tommy's Record Service. Appreciate the opportunity to serve. We've had a good year. No complaints as far as I know, and everything's fine. Just thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we had any reports from either the state or from Metro regarding any of the zones?
No, I spoke yesterday with Special Operations in the Metropolitan Police Department, asked if there were any issues that they wanted to either be present or send through me to the commission. They expressed that there had been no problems. I also spoke with the Emergency Communications Center and asked the same question: had there been any issues with response times or failing to provide the services they required during the ordinance? They said they had none and chose not to appear.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Smiths, at this point, if you'd like, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, that's right. He spoke.
They don't have to be present.
They don't have to be present.
I don't see him out there anywhere.
Thank you. At this point, we'll close the public hearing portion of our annual emergency record zone public hearing. Mr. Fields, I see that the next item is there's a request from Music City Towing for an emergency zone. If we first approve all existing emergency zone operators for another year, that will in effect, by default, be ruling on Music City Towing's request, correct?
That would be true. The normal process that you've in the past would be hear all applications. In order to operate a zone, you either have to it has to be take an existing zone, a zone could be created, or a zone could be transferred. And they made application back in May prior to the deadline, and now we included that in the packet that we sent out in the original email without the addendums.
Do you have any information on Music City Towing's application?
Their application is in order. I personally inspected all of their vehicles back in December.
Yes.
Early morning in the rain, as I remember. A little dark, but they've been operating the last couple of years. In fact, they came. They became a non-consent towing company 16 months ago,
Yes.
something like that, and we've not had any problems or issues that we've needed to bring forward. And Mr. Brooks is present to speak.
Mr. Brooks, would you like to come forward?
Yes, I'm Jimmy Brooks, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're doing well. It's been a great year. We're growing. We'd like to take the next step, whether if you create one, we want you to put our name out there, and our record so far has been exemplary, and it's been a pleasure working with people, and we'd like to grow. And we're doing a good job, and we'd like to do a better job.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner?
I'd like to know who owns that territory that you're talking about here by Broadway. Whose is that right now?
That's the Martin's Towing. It's downtown.
Music City is located in this general vicinity here out on Charlotte at about 30th in Charlotte.
30th and Charlotte.
Well, he's interested in the zone covering the downtown Broadway area.
That would be this. The area of Broadway would be this, and the Martin zone is that area here.
Part of that, we misunderstood. We thought that originally that you couldn't have more than two zones, or more than one zone. So we were thinking, well, if she has two, maybe there's an opportunity for us to do that. But Mr. Field explained to me that it is acceptable to have two zones, so we just want to put our face and our name out here and hopefully grow.
How's the non-consent business work?
That's where the money's at, guys. It's great. We do mostly memberships, and you got to work hard for that money. So the next step is the emergency zones, and when the police call you, you go, and steady income. So
No complaints on no complaints about you on the non-consent.
no,
side?
sir. No, sir.
Mr. Fields, how, I guess I can ask Bailey's and Dad's this question directly, but do you know how long they've how long have these existing emergency zones been in effect with these operators?
With these operators, and I'd have to be specific, Bailey's, Martin's, and Mike's have been together for...
We bought Custom in 08. We've had Martin since 1945, 42. And that was owned by my husband's father that was let down to him as well as to me. And we bought Custom in 08, and we bought Bailey's in 2010.
I know that Dad's in West Nashville. I know that Mr. Mitchell bought Dad's in West Nashville to put them... He owned Dad's and then bought West Nashville a year and a half ago.
It'll be 1 year ago this month.
1 year ago.
Yeah.
And then the other company, Cotton's and TowPro, owned by Doug Williams, have been... Doug was in business when I was here in 2003, and when I left and when I came, he ended up purchasing Cotton's. So somewhere in the mid-2000s.
Thank you, Mr. Fields.
2011. 2011. I apologize. 2011. Cotton's joined.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate wanting to expand.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I think that given that there hasn't been any complaints from Metro Police or any of the other emergency services that might call on towing companies, I'm hesitant, even though I don't get to make a motion, to see why there's a need to change any of the existing zones or their operators right now. But maybe the other commissioners have comment on that.
as I said, I appreciate wanting to expand, but I don't see any reason to pull territories from any of the existing companies right now.
Anyone like to make a motion?
I move we approve the existing operators and zones for emergency towing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes to approve all existing emergency zone operators with their existing zones. I believe that concludes our business today. Unless there's other business, Mr. Fields?
The only other business that I need to bring to you, at the last meeting, you moved your July meeting to July the 15th. This room is available on July the 15th. However, there's some issues with our friends at Metro 3 and have asked if we would be willing, if the commission would be willing to meet at the on the Fulton campus in the Sunny West Conference Center for your meeting on July the 15th. The arrangements have already been made. The room is reserved. There's adequate parking. I anticipate a public hearing on a potential piece of legislation on transportation network companies to be on your agenda that day, so it would actually be a pretty good meeting for that. But it'd be up to you to decide if this room is available. Channel 3 will have to operate a little bit differently because they have another request from the school board.
Where is that building exactly? Do you have an address?
It's at 800 2nd Avenue South. It's the Fulton campus is the Howard office building, the old Metro office building, as well as the Lindsley Hall, which is where the Planning Commission used to be.
Will we go into the Howard building?
You go into the Howard building on the ground floor to a it's where many of the other commissions meet on
Sunny
a
West,
regular basis.
is it Sunny West? So it's where you get your license plate registration. If you still go in for that, you just go down the steps and go to the
You get
right.
your license plate on the left, and you have your commission meetings on the right.
Do we need a motion for that, or just?
I don't think so. You could make one, but if you'd like to make one, I think that's fine. And I think administratively, we can we've scheduled the room if you're willing.
That's agreeable to me.
I'll publicly, we'll go ahead and get on the website as quickly as we can that it will be at that location on the 15th of July at 1:30.
All right. Thank you.
It is a Tuesday, not a Thursday, a Tuesday the 15th.
Is there a motion to adjourn? All those in or second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.